Welcome to School Zone, the show all about your local school districts here in the White Mountains. I'm your host, John Larsen, School Board President. Today on our show, we have Mr. Shad Housley, our Superintendent of Show Low School District, and Mr. Shawn West, Director of Facilities and Transportation. First of all, if you would just quickly give a quick intro, a little more than what I gave, if you would, both, and we'll go from there.
Well, I'm Shad Housley, the superintendent, as you said, at Show Low. This is just concluded my second year in the school district, and look forward to the next year. And I have a wife and 4 children, and we love being in this area, and glad that we are able to work in the Show Low School District.
And I'm Shawn West, the Director of Transportation and Facilities for Show Low. I just got here in November, and I have a wife and 7 children, and we're excited to be here, and we're grateful to finish up this last school year.
Thank you. First of all, Mr. Housley, if you would, today we're going to talk about the bond here in the Show Low School District, how it's going, and then after, if you can give us a little bit of an update on that. After that, maybe we'll talk specifically. We received a nice fleet of school buses, and we'd like you to tell us about those. Sure. Housley.
Well, first I just want to again thank the community for their support of the bond in November, and to ensure them that things are moving forward. Sometimes it feels like a snail's pace, but definitely moving forward. We had the bonds sell in April, which was great. The market was just right for those, so we've got good ratings on our bond. We had to go through the audit process first. And we got a AA rating when we sold our bonds, which was phenomenal for a school district to be able to sell at a AA rating. Not many districts are able to do that, so that speaks well to our financial standing and our stability and where we are right now financially. We currently have been in review with the Bond Oversight Committee. We've met 3 times as a committee and kind of talked about different projects that we had on our bond document, and kind of started to prioritize where we needed to look. Nothing could really be bought or happen until the bonds were sold. So once that happened, we've now started to accelerate. We have an architect that has been drawing our first priority, which is to help to secure our entry vestibules and to provide those secure pathways from the parking lot into the center of the school. Looking at some restructuring and remodeling of some office spaces, entryways, and then we began to evaluate some carpets. We had to do some evaluation of our electrical systems to figure out whether our systems currently, as they are, could sustain AC and to how much they could support, whether it was a regular traditional commercial AC unit, or if it was something like a split AC unit, or if we needed to go to a high efficiency swamp cooler. And so we've been back and forth with those, and we've presented some options to the Oversight Committee. We expect that the draft version of the black lines of our plans will be in here shortly, so that we can begin to review those and procure a general contractor. And then we're also looking at things like carpet and paint and the smaller things that we can go out right now and acquire some subcontractors and other people to come in and do those. We're excited the opportunity this is going to provide local jobs and opportunities for local contractors and the local workforce. And that's a commitment that we've had from the get-go to make sure as much of the work that we have can be passed along to the local community. Also, we've been working with the School Facilities Board to pair our dollars with bond money with School Facilities Board money, and it looks like right now we're projecting anywhere from $1 to $3 million in approved projects that will help to supplement the $10 million that we had. So really stretching our $10 million to $13 million is, and maybe even more than that if we got really optimistic, but that's where we hope to be.
Would you do me a favor and explain that just a little bit more about the grants that we get? and exactly what you're talking about there.
Sure. The state of Arizona has what they call the School Facilities Board. It's underneath the Department of Ed and also the State Board of Education, and it's one of the state agencies similar to those. They receive X number of dollars of funding per year from the state legislature, and their sole purpose is to make sure that all schools in the state are kept at a minimum standard. Well, those over the last 10 years where there's been cuts in the state budget and other things, that money has been about anywhere from $17 to $31 million for all the schools in the state, and you got access to that money by applying for what they call a school renewal, a building renewal grant. And so you have deficiencies, you apply for the grant, and then if it's approved, then they fund the project to get it renewed. We've identified a lot of deficiencies over the course of the last 2 years, and the ones that we feel like have a good shot to be renewed or redone by the School Facilities Board, we've submitted for building renewal grants. Mr. West takes care of that, and we really have to look at what the minimum guidelines are and how we are deficient in those standards, and then apply those standards to our request. And we have some projects on the burner now, and like I said, it'll be somewhere between $1 million and $3 million is what we're projecting, and hopefully for a little bit more even.
So basically, we've got the money that the voters approved in the bond, and then we've applied for these grants, and then depending on what we receive, we receive, and we can use that and pair it with those bond monies in order to continue to make even more improvements than what we planned. That's such a great thing, and I'm so grateful that you head that up and make sure that we are out there trying to get some of those extra dollars that we can get. I really appreciate that. Mr. Housley, would you tell us a little bit about the Bond Oversight Committee?
So the Bond Oversight Committee has several members from the community, business owners and others who have expressed interest on being on the committee. We have about 8 members of the committee. We try to meet monthly. Sometimes it doesn't happen monthly because of the way information comes in. We had a real lag of, we were waiting for the bonds to sell and waiting for architects to get back things and studies to be done on our electrical and other things like that. So those study surveys had to be done. But they meet, and we present all the studies, all the review, all the plans to them. They give us recommendations and make sure that we're in line with the way that we structured our request to the public for our bonds, to ensure that the monies are being spent the way that they were meant to be. So our number one priority was safety and security, and that's where we've been trying to really pound out what's best and how can we best utilize our money. The second thing on there was transportation. To get out in front of things, we went ahead and ordered the buses in January so they could be in. We anticipated them being in July, maybe by the start of school, and they came in early. So we got a break there and lucky with that. But when we go and we look at technology and classroom technology, we look at other things like that. They're going to make sure that we stay in line with the way that we told the public we were going to spend that money in. And it's well appreciated. Their insight's been great, and we value the voters and what they voted for, and we want to make sure that we're aligning what we do with what the intent was, so that the trust continues to be there.
Great, thank you. This is probably a good spot to express gratitude towards those members who were willing to be a part of that and to be a part of this really great process we have going on in the Shola district right now. So as you said, we expected to get the buses sometime in July. We were hoping maybe for one by July 4th, and things have been a lot better than our expectations. Would you be willing to share with us how that all went down?
Sure. So when you go through the bidding process, and we picked the buses through Bluebird, or Canyon State Bus Sales out of Glendale, but Bluebird is the manufacturer, and they're out of Georgia. and each bus is built specifically to your specifications. So what happened is when we were going through the ordering process, our mechanic here in Show Low and myself, we sat down with the salesman and we spec'd out our buses, like what we expect the Show Low buses to have in them. And from that, they took it to the factory in Georgia and they built each one of our buses specifically to what we wanted.
Can you share with us some of the specs that you
Yeah,
insisted
so
that we needed
absolutely.
For our area?
For our area, because we go to the valley a lot, I mean, we have to climb the canyons. We have the largest Cummins diesel engine that can be put into a school bus because we have to climb those hills. The buses that we have had traditionally have been one of the smaller sized engines, which causes overheating and which causes all kinds of other mechanical issues. We also have the larger transmission, which is going to be able to pull that hill for the buses that have a conventional. So we order two types. There's a conventional bus that has, it looks like a truck. It has the nose in the front, and then we have a transit style, which has the engine in the back. So one of the engines pulls it up the hill, and the other one pushes up the hill. And both those buses came with the largest engine and the largest transmission, so it can do that effectively. We ordered our buses with air conditioning. Even though we may not necessarily need air conditioning in Show Low for our routes, we need them in Tucson, we need them in the valley, we need them in other areas, so we had to make sure we had air conditioning in our buses. All of our buses came with storage for equipment. So the transit style buses have what they call pass-through storage, so it can go from the left side of the bus and it goes all the way to the right side of the bus. The conventionals have it has to separate because there's an axle, a drive axle that goes in between. But there's still storage nonetheless on each side of the bus. One of the biggest things that we asked for was cameras. You know, most of our buses had cameras in them that don't work, or there was just one camera in the front and you can never see what was going on. Our new buses have 7 cameras. They're digital LED cameras inside the bus. So now we can see what happens inside of every seat. We have a dash camera that shows outside the windshield. We have a camera that faces outside over the bus driver so we can see the dashboard. We can see the service store where students are getting on and off. There's a camera outside by the stop signs. So if a car was to happen to run our stop sign, it takes a picture of that car, which helps us when we have a partnership with the Department of Public Safety and Student Transportation, where we can send a citation to DPS, and then they send a citation to the person that ran our stop sign. This camera is now going to give us the picture of that vehicle to help with the description when we send that to DPS, so that way when they send out their citations they have a more accurate photograph. On the outside of our school buses there's 2 stop signs. We used to just have one. Now there's 2. There's one in the front and there's one in the back. All of the buses come with what they call LED strobes. So nothing flashes anymore, it all strobes to give more of a higher visibility for pedestrians. On the conventional buses, on the very back door, there's a sign that actually when they activate the lights, it warns the cars behind them that the bus is stopping. And when the stop sign is activated, it says, "Stop, do not pass." Because that was a complaint that we used to get from motorists, is that they didn't know the bus was stopping because the lights are traditionally too high and they didn't see that it was flashing. But now there's a sign in the middle of the bus that tells them that it's stopping. So we added all these safety features for our district specifically to keep our students safe.
Great. Can you tell me a little bit, did we do anything for the winters? I know we've struggled with winters the last couple of years here, but will we anticipate getting snow and ice and bad roads?
We did. So we actually order our school buses with what their drop-down snow chain. There's a button now that the driver can push, and the snow chain actually comes down and it rotates on the bus tire, and it doesn't wrap it, but what it does is there's a wheel that will now roll on the inside tire that spreads chains underneath the drive tire so that it can operate on ice and snow. And then when the driver doesn't need that anymore, they can push the button and it brings the chains back up under the chassis.
So conventional, you used to wrap a tire with tire chains. This is actually feeding chain under the tires as it drives.
Correct.
Under the drive tires. Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
Super. Anything else you can tell us about the buses? How many did we get total?
So we ordered a total of 10, and we have one brand new special needs bus that has the capacity of 5 wheelchairs. And then we ordered 2 what they call Type A, so basically it'll be like a Chevy or Ford chassis, a pickup chassis, with a school bus box on the back for special needs students. And those can go down the smaller roads. And then we have 8, so actually we got 11 because we got an extra one because of cost. We actually were able to get an extra bus because of the savings that we got on the other buses. So we have 11 new school buses. 2 of them, we're waiting for the 2 Type A's. They're not done yet. We should be getting those between July and August.
Okay. I know you and I, we kind of mentioned it in passing, I think, but there's a lot of concern nowadays about the children inside the bus, whether they should be seat belted in or not seat belted in. What did we think about that? What forethought went into that as far as these buses?
Yeah, we actually talked about that a lot. The seats that we have now, all school bus seats now have to be 39 inches tall. So it almost you can't see a student anymore when they sit in a seat.
You're talking about the back from the seat to the
from the bottom of the
Okay.
seat. So where your bottom goes to the top of the seat is 39 inches tall. We ordered all of our seats are seat belt ready, because that way we anticipate at some point there's going to be a law or it's going to become necessary that seat belts are going to be required in school buses. And with the seat belt ready seats, we can now get the seat belts put in them, and for the ones that we just currently got. You know, I mean, in the future, I mean, as of right now, it's kind of a safety issue. You know, it's a safety debate, I would say, more than an issue, whether or not a seat belt in a school bus is safe. And again, it's a debate. It could be personally interpreted by different individuals, but the way that it stands currently is it's a safety debate.
Have you heard anything? Do you think that that'll come by way of a federal standard, or will that be a state issue? Do you think, if and when?
It'll become a
seatbelts?
Federal standard, is what
Typically, it is,
Yeah.
right? Okay, great. I'm assuming these buses came with all of the typical safety doors, escape doors, and whatnot
Correct.
in the sides, the rear, and probably one in the roof also.
Yeah, there's 2 on the roof. There's the one on the side. The conventionals have one that goes out the back instead of
Okay.
the sides. All of we did add a reflective feature. So standard, they just have reflective tape around, like the emergency exits and stuff. We went ahead and added the reflective tape around the entire bus. So at night when you're driving, everything reflects. The school bus lettering itself reflects. And these buses will actually, one of our buses will be on display starting tomorrow, thanks to the Sholo Chamber of Commerce for the Sholo Days. So for the next 3 days, we'll have one of our new buses at the senior park that the community can
fields?
go by. Yeah,
Okay. Great.
that the community can go by and they can see it. And you know, again, we're grateful for the passing of the bond, but they'll be able to see the bus and some of the safety features on the outside. One that I forgot to mention, we have a crossing arm on the front bumper, so when the driver activates the door to load students, there's a yellow arm that will come across in front of the bumper, forcing the students to cross out in front of the bus and not cutting from the windshield anymore.
So the intent on that is for them to get away from the bus so they don't come out right from behind the nose of the bus, and a car that may be passing would clip them. So Gives them
Correct.
a little more sight.
Correct. It gives the driver's side of the student and the student side of the driver.
Great. I'm assuming that we probably had at least a few of our bus drivers had the opportunity to drive those buses. How have they, what has been their feedback on how they feel about the buses comparative to our current fleet or
Sure.
the
Well, I could tell you, so we had the opportunity. Normally, when we get brand new school buses, when they're delivered, they take the old ones away.
okay,
But we didn't have that opportunity here in Shola. We needed to keep our old ones to get through the school year.
okay,
So what we did on the last day of school, we had the drivers that were assigned brand new buses take the old ones away. But the drivers that were assigned new buses, they've had the chance to, they've driven them as we've got them delivered to us. They've been driving around town. We had to put a couple of them on route on the last couple days of school because we had a couple of buses break down, so that was fortunate that we actually had them.
yeah,
We've had both positive feedback from students that have ridden in them and from the drivers. The one driver that got to drive it, he came back in the office and said, "Man, this is just like driving a Cadillac," because I can't believe this is a school bus. And the students, as they got on, they were walking on the school bus like, "Is this really ours?" I mean, it says, like, "This is a school bus?" And it's like, "Yeah, this is a school bus. And it's ours." They're just night and day difference. I mean, they smell new, and that smell usually stays for quite some time. They drive a lot nicer. They're not tore up, they're not beat up, which is another convenient piece with those cameras, because the drivers have now been assigned a bus. So whoever's going to get a brand new bus has already been assigned that bus. And some of those brand new buses are going to go on routes that might not have students that, how would you say, are the best behaved students. But you know what, there's students that are really good behaved that you can't punish them. And you got to get buses out there. They got to be able to be brought to school safely. And we're working with the superintendent, as well as we'll be bringing it to the school board, penalties. So if a student decides that we're going to slash a seat or ride on a seat, those seats cost money, and we're gonna spread that cost on to the student, and they can replace it. And those cameras now are going to be able to catch that. The bus drivers are going to be responsible to assign seats to students, and they're going to know where they sit. So now the students are accountable for their behavior on the bus. The bus driver is accountable for the students' behavior and their own behavior on the bus and how they treat the outside of the bus. But the feedback that we're getting so far is they love them.
good. Couple of points. Did you say that every seat now is visible from one of the cameras in
Yes.
the bus? So every seat will be able to be monitored, and that's great. Both if we have some unfortunate events that somebody wants to do something destructive, but also, bullying is becoming a major problem, and we'll be able to keep a tighter rein on those sorts of things also.
Absolutely.
So that's great. I appreciate that. Speaking of the old buses, what did we do with the old buses, Mr. Housley?
A good question. Part of the bond was in the purchasing of the buses was to trade some of them in and to use some of that value, if there was any value, to help offset the cost of the buses. And
So just as if I took my car to a car dealer and traded my old Ford Bronco in on a new Ford Bronco?
a little bit like that. Unfortunately, buses don't hold their value. So many of our buses, their value would be anywhere from $1,000 to $5,000 total. Now you're talking about $160,000 vehicle now is valued less than $5,000, and so they don't hold their value very much. One of the caveats is they had to get from our lot to their lot, and so Canyon State's in Phoenix, and in fact we had one bus that was pulling into the lot where we were doing the exchanges, and the engine blew and wasn't able to make the trip. So we've worked out some other details for that one, but that's part of the trade piece. The Friday after school, as Mr. West has talked about, the drivers got on all the old buses. We did a caravan down to the valley. They made it, smoke and everything. And we got them to the end of the road and traded them in. They're no longer on our books. So that's a good thing for us.
So did we go 10 for 10 or 11 for 11?
Yeah, we did
Great.
10 for 10.
Super. Okay, so it was a straight up turnkey on old to new then. And obviously we inventoried our buses and kept the best buses that we had and tried our best to turn in the...
Yeah, we got to keep the best buses that we had, and so we have a pretty good fleet now. We now are in a position where we can do some rotation of the older fleet as they need to be rotated out, and we have new fleet that's there that's going to be sustainable for a long time. One of the things I want to point out is, in the bond we mentioned about $1.7 million for our bus purchases. All the things that Mr. West talked about, because of the time we went into the market to purchase them, and some commitments to do things really well, we got a phenomenal deal on our buses. Those buses probably under normal circumstances would have ran between $186,000 and $190,000 a piece, and we got them for significantly less. I think our invoice is just over $1.4 million for all those buses and the things that we did. So we now have some room inside that transportation budget to address an aging white fleet, which, we're talking about vans and minibuses that transport smaller teams and clubs and organizations to where they need to go in a smaller fashion. So we're able to do that, and happy for that.
Great. Well, thank you so much, both of you, for coming today. I really appreciate you coming and telling us about, updating us on the bond and letting us know how things are going, and then the buses.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us here on School Zone, and we'll see you again soon.